Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're truly pleased that you can join us today at the first of our series of faculty conversations about various hot topics, as we're calling them in law. It gives us a chance to have you meet some of our faculty and learn about some of the really interesting things that they are doing, both here at the law school and also out in the rest of our community. And it's also a chance for us, hopefully, to hear what's on your mind. You can put questions in the chat. We do have someone monitoring the chat. And I think it's really going to be a wonderful afternoon. We'll be here for about 45 minutes. If we don't get to all of your questions, we'll certainly go back and answer those questions later on. And just a reminder, this session is being recorded, and we're recording it so that we can put it up on our website for those people who could not be here with us today and want to look at it at a future time. So I'm Anita Walton. I am the Assistant Dean for Admissions at Rutgers Law School here on the Newark campus. We're also joined by three of our faculty members who who teach in the corporate area, and also my colleague from Camden, Amy Timko, who's going to be monitoring the chat. So why don't we just dig in, and let's start with Doug Eakley, who is our professor here in Newark. Doug, go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your career path, and maybe a little bit about the courses that you're teaching.
Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Eakley, as Anita mentioned. I'm just finishing my 10th year here at Rutgers Law School. I spent most of my time before then in private practice. I clerked for a federal judge, started work with a Midtown Manhattan law firm, came home to New Jersey several years later after our first child started walking, and have been in New Jersey ever since. My practice was essentially complex commercial litigation, securities fraud, derivative litigation, some antitrust, but supplemented throughout by heavy doses of pro bono work. So I was on the board of the community law offices of East Harlem and of the Legal Aid Society when I was in New York. And then in New Jersey, migrated from Essex Newark Legal Services to Legal Services of New Jersey, which I chaired, and then the National Legal Services Corporation, which I chaired for a decade. And throughout, or most of that period, I was a trustee and then board chair of the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. I teach the basic business organizations course, which is your soup to nuts corporate and business law, and two intensive writing seminars, one on current issues in corporate governance and one on corporate compliance and enterprise risk management. I'm the founder and co-director of the Entrepreneurship Clinic, which is a project of the Center for Corporate Law and Governance, of which I am the founder and co-director. And I believe it at that for now, although I hope we come back to talking about the work of the center.
Okay, we will. Thank you. Sarah, go ahead. You can go next.
Thank you. Happy to meet everyone virtually. So my name is Sarah Dauche. I'm a professor here. This is the end of my 9th year, so I'm 1 year behind Professor Eakley. And I teach contracts and corporate social responsibility and business and human rights, and also consumer law. My perspective is pretty international. I came from a background in both working at a law firm and then after that working at a specialized agency of the United Nations called the International Fund for Agricultural Development, which is based in Rome. I have just historically been very focused on all things international and international development specifically. So thinking about how to alleviate global poverty issues, thinking about how to ameliorate and improve the protection of human rights, in particular across supply chains. And that's really what my research and practical work is focused on now. And like Doug, I hope to come back to that later.
Great, thank you. Yulia, go ahead, you're next. How are you?
Thank you, Anita. Sorry, everybody. I had some technical issues and joined a little bit late, but it's a pleasure to be here. And even though I don't see your faces of all the participants, I would like to welcome you to the corporate law programs of Rutgers Law School. And my name is Yuri Gustava. I teach primarily capital markets, securities regulation, financial regulation, innovation. And next semester, I will be teaching a crypto asset regulation, which will cover Bitcoin, Ether, and other novel crypto assets and cryptocurrencies. I'm also the head of the, co-head, I should say, of the Fintech and Blockchain Program of the Center for Corporate Law and Governance that Professor Eakley is co-running with his colleague from Camden. And prior to joining Rutgers, and I have been here for 9 years, prior to joining Rutgers, I was a professor at Fordham Law School.
Great, thank you, thank you. So as you can see, all of our professors, we have a big reputation for being a school that cares about social justice. However, we also have a very, very strong corporate faculty and corporate teaching faculty that also combine teaching corporate law and different areas of corporate law with social justice and with international, with an international flavor to it. So you heard some of that in the introductions. And I think that it's interesting to see how we can combine the two and make it work. So let's talk a little bit about the Center for Corporate Governance. This is a very interesting one of our 6 or 7 centers that we have that do a lot of interdisciplinary work, but also this particular center is run by Doug and Yulia, and they have done some phenomenal, interesting work and scholarship. Talk a little bit, Doug, about that program.
Okay, well, first, the Center for Corporate Law and Governance was created about 9 years ago, and at the time, Rutgers Law School Camden was a separate law school from Rutgers Law School Newark. And I reached out to the then dean of Rutgers Law School Camden, whom I had known, to say, is there a faculty member on your faculty who might like to link up with us and create a bi-law school center? And that was Arthur Leiby. Fast forward to the merger of the law school. We are I think the only center that has feet in both locations. And Arthur is the co-director of that. And as Anita mentioned, Yulia and Sarah are 2 of our engines of growth and development. The center serves several different purposes. The sort of main one is to serve as a bridge between what we call the real world and the law school, bringing people in from the real world to introduce us to issues with which they are currently wrestling to help inform our teaching and research, but also using that bridge to introduce the real world to our students. So we have a series of programs throughout the year. We just had a symposium on the future regulation of crypto assets, for example, but we also have student-facing programs as well, such as what's it like to be in-house counsel or the like. We have several different projects, one of which I mentioned is the Entrepreneurship Clinic. We also have the Fintech and Blockchain Program, which Professor Gustava is heading. We have the program on business and human rights, which Professor Dauche heads. We have a certificate program. If you want to project to the outside world of prospective employers that you are adept at and interested in corporate and business law, we have a program for you. If you take a certain combination of courses in the subjects that we offer, you will be able to graduate with that certificate, and that can go on your resume. If you want to really get into what the center does, just go to our website, CCLG, for Center for Corporate Law and Governance, .rutgers.edu, and there are various drop-down tabs there that will take you to the certificate program, to the entrepreneurship clinic, and to the other programs.
Yeah, thank you for putting those in the chat. Let's talk a little bit about the blockchain and fintech program. That's something fairly new. Am I right about that? Let's talk a little bit about that program. Yulia, would you like to to expound on it a little bit? I think people are, you hear about cryptocurrency and blockchain, and it's all a mystery to me. But tell us a
It's a
little bit
mystery to
about.
many people, Anita.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm not alone. So tell us a little bit about that program and what's the focus of it.
So actually, it's not as new as Professor Dauche's program in business and human rights. The Fintech program has been around for almost 2 years now, and Professor Eakley and I started it back in 2020, right before the pandemic, I think. We received a grant from the University Blockchain Research Initiative, which enabled us to do a lot of research on crypto and cryptocurrencies in general, and fintech as well, because those are slightly different things, fintech and cryptocurrencies and blockchain as well. And currently I'm teaching a course as part of the program on financial innovation and financial regulation. And next semester, as I said in the introduction, we'll be also teaching a course on crypto asset regulation specifically. And I'm currently completing a casebook for law schools on crypto asset regulation. It will be published in April. But what the program does is we serve as a hub, as an informational hub for all things crypto and fintech. Professor Eakley and I have started a collaboratory, which currently includes more than 60 members, partners from various law firms, former regulators, various law professors from the United States, from Europe, etc. And we meet on a bi-monthly basis. We discuss various most important events. And the symposium that Professor Eakley has just mentioned was a part also of that initiative. And in addition to the collaboratory, what we are doing is we currently have about 6 research fellows, or 7. I think it's 6 this year. And last year, we had a group of also 6 or 7 research fellows, mostly law students, but also a couple of PhD in economics students. And they're all working together, producing articles, blog posts, and a lot of research. Professor Eakley and I, for example, co-authored an article which was published in May last year, 2021, with 2 of our fellows who now are graduates of the law school, and we're very proud of them. One of them has just joined Lowenstein Sandler. And this is the program in a nutshell. We are also organizing various events. So technically it has 3 components. One is research, another one is teaching and this pedagogical development in crypto and blockchain related areas. And the third one is the collaboratory and serving as a hub, an informational hub for crypto and blockchain. And Professor Eakley and I have been presenting our work at various conferences. So we are advertising Rutgers Law School as a hub for fintech development and crypto regulation.
You might also just mention the transaction competition as an illustration of a hands-on experience in negotiating a deal.
That too. So the transactional competition was originally developed at the Cornell Law School, and we received all the materials from Cornell, and we replicated the transactional competition at Rutgers Law under the aegis of the center, of course. So we held 2 competitions, and it's an interesting format. We start with the regular course and then transition to an actual competition proper. Our judges were lawyers and attorneys from major law firms. Most of them are participants in the center's programs. So they served as judges, and students served as attorneys for a buyer and the seller in a corporate merger transaction. So it was an interesting experience as well.
That's great. I should mention that any symposiums that happen through any of the centers are open to students attending. So especially if it's on, if they're virtual and on Zoom, you can just register and click in. If they're in person, you can drop in and listen to some of the speakers. So there's a tremendous amount that goes on that you'll find on our website once you're here, and you'll hear about. I mean, every day there's 4 or 5 different events that are happening at the law school, whether they're virtual or now they're all virtual and not in person, but students are absolutely welcome to join in. Sarah, you mentioned that you've done a lot of work in the international area, and it's interesting because many of our students expressed interest in working internationally. They have, they spent a semester abroad when they were allowed to do that before COVID. Some of them want to work in human rights. Some of them want to work in, in the corporate area internationally. So could you speak a little bit about your experience and what advice you would give to students who want to follow that path?
Yeah. I've spent a really good chunk of both my time as a student and as a practitioner and as a professor exploring the international dimensions of law and how we can use the law, both hard binding law and sort of soft law like voluntary principles and guidance, etc., to improve specifically the social and environmental performance of transnational corporations. So now where I've sort of landed after really a long, like 15 years of traveling in international circles is that I'm just extremely interested in this intersection of business and human rights. And that has automatically an international dimension because supply chains that bring products and services into the US are international. Like nothing or very little actually gets wholly made in the US, right? Most of what we buy as consumers has some part, if not all of it, having been made by workers overseas in often quite complex supply chains. So my focus is really on international supply chains, and the governance of international supply chains in terms of with a very close eye on how can we improve the social and environmental performance of these supply chains and of the corporations that operate along different links in the supply chain. And so in that vein, and with tremendous support from the center, I just launched in January a new program on business and human rights law. And that program breaks down into two research projects at the moment. And one is the sort of flagship one for the time being is on, it's called Contracting for Human Rights. And it's a project that looks at how can we use international supply contracts, how can we upgrade international supply contracts and the contracting practices that buyers and suppliers engage in order to improve the human rights performance of those contracts and by extension of international supply chains. And so I've been working, a lot of my scholarship is very what we call engaged scholarship, which is to say that I'm working a lot with practitioners, working a lot with law firms, industry associations, civil society organizations, legislators as well. And what we aim to do with the Contracting for Human Rights project is come up with a sort of some guiding principles and also some model contract clauses that can be included in international supply chain contracts to improve their human rights performance. And I've been working on this particular project for very intensively for 2 years now. And we are seeing some pretty incredible feedback or reflections of the spreading of the word about the magic of contracts, which you will all learn about in your first year of law school, wherever you go, although of course we hope you will come to us. And as far as like, the sort of contracts are awesome message, it's kind of a new thing that people haven't been used to thinking about, like how can we leverage contracts? How can we upgrade contracts to improve human rights? And just last week, the European Union came out with a new directive, a draft directive still, but we're getting very close to the final text, that deals with essentially corporate accountability for their behavior in supply chains. And they say in the various articles in the law, they refer to contracting practices and to the need to develop model contract clauses. And the European Commission is going to be developing guidance around model contract clauses. We have it on sort of internal intelligence, low-key, you know, that our work with contracts has had a big influence on legislators thinking around the importance of including contracts in the corporate accountability frameworks that are coming out. But also, and this maybe will come as no surprise to you, because you may know that increasingly consumers, investors, everybody is becoming more and more concerned about how corporations perform environmentally and socially on human rights. And so we're seeing a flurry of legislation, not just from the EU, but also in New York. There is right now a bill kind of circulating in New York State that's called the Fashion Accountability and Sustainability Act, which is basically about improving and holding companies accountable for poor environmental and labor or social and human rights performance. And we're giving, through our project on business and human rights law, we're giving a lot of feedback on all this legislation. So, you know, should you come, should you join us, I would be so delighted to sort of bring you guys into the fold of this work, which has many dimensions. And the last dimension that I would just mention is, so contracting for human rights is one piece. And then the other piece is what we're calling the consumer law, the conscious consumer law project, which is about upgrading consumer law to better protect the interests of conscious consumers. So consumers who are making purchases that are in line with their values around things like human rights and environmental performance. And last piece of that, the Conscious Consumer Law Project, is led by our colleague, Professor Kristen Andersma, who is very active in the area of consumer financial protection. And her work explores really beautifully the intersections of international human rights and things like predatory lending and abusive consumer financial products. So I'll stop there and very happy to answer any questions.
Well, that's amazing. And I should add that, you know, students do get involved in doing research and helping all of the professors, whether it's, you know, with brief writing or research or however you need help during, I mean, they can't do this all on their own. It's a lot of research and work and writing that has to go into it, but that's really tremendous. What a wonderful way to, you know, we're all hearing about supply chain and how the supply chain has gotten broken thanks to COVID. And now people just, you know, they can't buy a new car. They can't, they're finding shelves on the supermarket sometimes are missing their favorite product. And so this is how it all relates back to international human rights. It's really quite fascinating. Thank you for that. That was great. Doug, maybe you can talk a little bit about the entrepreneurship clinic. There are some people on, I think, that are evening, and that clinic was created for them because it is offered in the summer. But let's talk a little bit about some of the cases that might come through that clinic that you have seen.
Right. Well, we actually we're open for business both semesters.
Okay.
We have a case rounds at 5 to 6, and then a mandatory weekly seminar from 6 to 8 on various aspects of law that you need to know if you're going to be representing startup organizations. And we have 8 students per semester working on a variety of matters directly with clients. And they are in the main not-for-profit or startups coming out of the Newark and Camden communities that have an idea or a service that they would like to bring to market. And the entrepreneurship clinic does everything from, all right, you have a business plan. We have to form the entity. Do we incorporate it? Do we create a limited liability company? You need to negotiate founders agreements and, and bylaws and certificate of incorporation. And there are inevitably copyright, intellectual property issues that go with it as well. But we have represented a woman who's developed a gluten-free line of food products that she's actually sold to a local shopping chain. We have another client called Dirty Soles, SOLES, that refashions and refurbishes shoes. We have several different medical innovations that people are hopeful of taking to market, but it's a broad range of entrepreneurial activity, and we give our students an ability to represent them hands-on with the supervision of the faculty staff.
It's very interesting because usually when people hear about clinics, they're thinking in terms of, criminal justice clinics and litigation work, and not necessarily about transactional clinics.
Yep.
And this is one of two. We also have another transactional clinic that operates out of Newark, and I think also out of Camden, that do some of the same work. But I think in your case, because it's entrepreneurship, it's people trying to do startup small businesses.
We represent both nonprofit and for-profit enterprises.
Right, that's great. One other thing that I think is all part of this is we have a new business law journal, and it's not so new. It's been around for a while, but it just got accredited by the faculty, and now students can join that journal for credit. Can you talk a little bit about the journal, whoever is most comfortable talking about that journal? And it does straddle both Camden and Newark.
Julia, you might just mention our symposium.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, my mouse is acting up a little bit.
Oh.
So yes, as Professor Eakley mentioned, 2 weeks ago, actually time flies, 2 weeks ago, the center held a symposium, but it was co-sponsored with the Rutgers Business Law Review. Consequently, we are collaborating with our students, with law review editors, and we will be publishing proceedings from that symposium. So there is a lot of collaboration between the Center for Corporate Law and Governance and its various programs, but the Business Law Review is a standalone journal. Of course, it has its own board, and I think they are doing some fascinating work and publishing great articles.
There was one question that just came up in the chat that someone said, they said, thank you. And everything sounds just fascinating. She's particularly interested in Central America and indigenous community protection in trade, innovation, and bringing products to the market. Any experience with working with Central America? Sarah, I know you were more European Union based.
I mean, the supply chains are coming, from all over. For example, the model contract clauses that we've developed could be used in international supply contracts with, imagine on the US side, an apparel brand like Adidas, right? Or the Gap, a US brand, contracting with a clothing manufacturer in Central America. That contract could incorporate our model contract clauses, and those focus on human rights. The substance of the human rights that should apply to that contract will differ depending on maybe where you are in the world, and in particular, what the specific human rights risks that are most serious and prevalent in that part of the world are. So we don't take a prescriptive view as to beyond the human rights, the Declaration on Human Rights and various international law treaties. We don't take a stance on how specific you should get about human rights. We leave that to the companies and the contract counterparts. But if you are in a part of the world where indigenous rights are really at stake with manufacturing, for example, then you would bring those into the contract in ways that I can talk you through later offline, if you like. In other words, a lot of the business and human rights work operates on a framework of like, you adjust whatever instruments you're using to reflect and account for the human rights risks that are specific to your transaction, your location, and those differ depending on where you are in the world. I hope that helps.
Great, thank you. There was a question earlier that I think Amy answered in the chat, but evening students, and there's a couple evening students I noticed that are on this call, want to make sure that they can also participate in events in the center, the certificate program, and helping you with research. And the answer to that is, I see all the nodding heads. The answer to that is yes. And I would say often evening students bring a whole different set of experiences to the table. Many of you have been out working and have worked on Wall Street, worked in investment banking, or been teachers, or done a whole variety of different professions. And so you bring experiences to this kind of work that are very different from someone who's just graduated from undergrad with maybe a business degree or a degree in political science and is just interested in corporate law. So I think we all benefit from people who have that ability. Yeah, go ahead, Yulia, talk about the certificate for a few minutes. Thank you.
Let me actually share my screen. Why not? Since we are in Zoom, it makes things so much more convenient.
There we go.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, now we're good. Yep.
So do you see the certificate program?
Yes.
I'm not sure what you're looking at right now.
We're looking at the homepage. It's a certificate program.
Excellent. I have shared the link in the chat. So I noticed some of the evening students asked about whether they could get the certificate. Yes, of course you can. So you can read the description of the certificate program here, and the specific course requirements will be under this red button. In short, every student who has maintained an average GPA in all business law courses, so the average GPA of 3.0 can get the certificate. The application should be filed at the end of the semester, at the end of the graduating semester.
Yulia, excuse me 1 second. You've hit research, so we're showing the picture of center research rather than the certificate program right next to it.
Oh, I apologize.
All right, it's just
Let me stop sharing. Center research. So I was talking to myself.
No, we heard you.
Can you see the certificate program now?
Now we're there. Yep.
Good. Thank you. I just have a few pages open at the same time. So the description is right here. Once again, you need to maintain the GPA, the average GPA in business law courses of at least 3 to apply for the certificate. And this is a requirement that we cannot waive. So that's the threshold requirement. At the end of your graduating semester, you can apply for the certificate, provided you have all your grades, because you need to calculate the GPA. So if you go here on the red button, you will see the courses which are required. So the first one is business organizations. This is a never to be waived requirement for the certificate. Everyone who would like to apply must take business organizations. Then there are 3 core courses, and I will show you the core courses in a second, and then various electives. At the moment, we have more than 70 various electives which are included in the master course list of the law school. However, if you are taking a substantively similar course, you can easily apply for a waiver and you will substitute one course for another. This can be easily done. We are, however, more strict we're much stricter when it comes to waivers of core courses. We almost never grant those waivers. But in any case, if you need a waiver for various circumstances, if you have taken a similar course, a substantively similar course to what we have on the list, you can apply for a waiver. Now, what's required? Obviously, it's BO, and then several courses related to accounting, bankruptcy, corporate finance, tax, that are created in, so also bankruptcy and securities regulation or securities and market regulation. And let me stop sharing my screen. The final component of the certificate program is to give you a chance to be introduced to the practice of law. Consequently, you need to take either a skills course or an externship, or obviously a clinic. So it's either or. You don't have to take a skills course, do an externship and the clinic at the same time.
Great, thank you. We're going to wrap it up. I know that some of our professors are teaching very shortly, and we've had some wonderful questions and comments in the Q&A and in the chat. Thanking all of you for really an enlightening 45 minutes about everything that we have here at Rutgers. It's really quite extraordinary, the amount of depth that you all bring to your teaching and to the students that are here, and to the scholarship and to what is going on in the outside world. It's really quite extraordinary. So I appreciate everyone who stayed on the whole time. And thank you to our panelists. We will again post the recording up on our website, and you'll all get a link as to where that recording will be. But thank you very much for really a wonderful panel, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.